Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Laden Yuracek.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Fabio Boi from Corticale in Italy. So hopefully my Italian accent was pretty good. But they do a very high-scale neural interface, neural implant. So I don't know if I should mention this, but it's similar to NeuroPixels, where they have thousands of channels. But it's not NeuroPixels. You guys have your own technology and your own development. But yeah, Fabio, pleasure to have you on the show. Do you want to introduce yourself better than I just did?
So, Alan, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and to discuss with you about, let's say, neurotechnology and our technology especially. So just a brief introduction about me. I'm, let's say, a robotic engineer. And after that, I moved to neuroscience, let's say, neuroengineering especially. And I got my PhD in brain-machine interfaces, let's say, bidirectional brain-machine interfaces. And let's say after that, after 3 years, I moved to another lab that was involved into the development of this new kind of active neural implant. And in particular, the name of this technology is SiNAPS. That is an acronym that stands for Simultaneous Neural Active Pixel Sensor Technology. And let's say I did there my postdoc for more than 6 years. And after that, what we have done is that we were capable to realize the very first prototype of this new kind of implantable technology. And after having validated that in animal model, we decided to move forward, and let's say this technology, trying to push it towards clinical application. And for doing this, we founded in 2021 Corticale, as you correctly pronounce it. Your Italian is great. And let's say thanks to 2.5 million investment of one of the four founders of Corticale, we were capable to, let's say, perfectionate our technology and make, let's say, in the end, a product. And nowadays, the very good part is that beside the fact that we are pushing towards adopting this technology for the new generation of PCI technologies, we are also simultaneously providing our technology to many, many labs worldwide. And similarly to what NeuroPixel is doing, we are, let's say, giving the opportunity to neuroscientists to look at the brain in a totally different way, let's say in a high dense and high resolution manner.
Yeah, excellent. So what are some of the features of your technology and your devices?
So let's say the main features of our technology that somehow differentiated us with respect to all the other competing technologies, also NeuroPixels, as you correctly mentioned in the beginning, is the fact that, as you know, let's say in the past especially, most of the neural interfaces you usually need a point-to-point connection. So you have a ratio 1:1 between the number of electrodes and the number of interconnecting wires that you need to read out from each sensor. While in this case, what we have done is to miniaturize all the external electronics at a level of miniaturization that it can fit directly into the neural interface itself. And especially with respect to NeuroPixels, where they have this very dense array with a lot of pixels, but they have the whole electronics into the base of the chip, let's say in the non-implantable part of the chip. And this constrained them to, let's say, pre-select just a subset of the available pixel. In our case, we put the electronics directly underneath the sensor array. And so you have each pixel that is capable to record with its own amplifier that is directly embedded into the pixel itself. And this allowed us to record in a whole array, let's say, to perform a whole array readout. So you don't have to pre-select any subset of the available electrodes, but you can read out from all of them at the same time.
Yeah, so instead of having a very long trace going to the end, which then, makes the diameter, the size of the shank very fat at the base of it. You can, I guess, digitize it, right? And
So this
do all
is
this.
actually just a fully analog signal. So you have, let's say, locally a neural amplifier, low noise neural amplifier underneath each single pixel. And we have this module of pixel that are 10 division multiplexed to a single output analog lines.
Got it. So you still are having the lines out, but it's multiplexed. Okay. And
Exactly.
yeah, so you're able to use some small electrical components, capacitors and transistors and everything like this, right? Are you using some TSMC kind of microchip CPU style technologies, or what kind of cutting edge, 2 nanometer stuff are you guys using?
So that's correct, Laden. So our neural interfaces are called, let's say, active neural interfaces because in the end they are just microchip. They are semiconductor-based devices, and so you have, let's say, all the electronics directly into the stack of the metal layers of the neural interface. And so you have, let's say, kind of capacitors, resistors, and all the stuff that you need in order to build up your circuitry so that you can, let's say, do whatever you want in principle into your neural interface. In our case, we just need, let's say, amplifier and let's say filters and multiplexers in order to achieve our goal, let's say.
Okay. And so, what is the application that this is best used for? What kind of neural implants? I mean, a lot of them, especially bioelectronic medicine, they don't need as many channels, a dozen channels or something like this. Cochlear implants also don't need so many. Is this more for the retinal side, or what applications do you see this being especially useful for?
So let's say here there is this is a very interesting question actually, because let's say this kind of architecture, let's say, I don't want to talk about the SiNAPS in particular, but let's say the fact that you can record from many channels and just think about thousands of channels allowed you to discover things that in the beginning maybe you didn't realize. Like I just want to bring you an example. During my postdoc, for example, I use high density planar MIA for extracellular recording from mouse retina, for example. Usually in the past, people were used to record from just 256 channel maximum. And people at that time, they just said, okay, it's more than enough. We have 256 channel. We can see everything about the retina and we don't need more. But actually, when you move to high density neural recording, you discover a tremendous, let's say, richness of the signal, and you really appreciate the fact that you were actually losing something before. And the same applies also in the case of in vivo recording. That is what you can do with our technology. And so let's say the application are really a tremendous number of possible applications, especially in basic science. But if we discuss and if we think about, let's say, clinical application, our first and main target is not the only one, of course, but let's say our very primary goal is to use this kind of technological platform to realize the next generation brain-computer interfaces. Because as you know, brain-computer interfaces mostly rely on the fact that you can get the highest possible amount of information and you can extract it out of the brain in order to train your decoder that is capable somehow to interpret which is the patient thoughts. And let's say in terms of performance, the higher is the amount of information that you can extract. And let's say in a sort of proportional way, you have also a decoder performance increase. And so let's say this is our main objective. So to realize through our technological platform, the first BCLI capable to record from tens of thousands of simultaneously recording, let's say, sensors, neural sensors, in order to make better performing especially the ML or AI based decoding algorithm. So this is the primary goal. for us.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Yeah, exactly. I never understood, the idea that, oh, we have electrodes, and 256 or whatever number is good enough. And yeah, but my argument was always like, okay, well, you can always put the 1,000 or the 10,000 in and just shut off all except 256. You don't even look at it. And but of course, best to look at it, and then you choose, and you really decide which one is useful or not, and then you can electronically make up for any movement or localization or something like this. So I think that definitely is the better option. Better to have more than less, and then you can choose from there.
But this is exactly the point, Adam. So having so much information doesn't mean that you have to use all of it, but means that you can select which is the most informative one. And in this sense, you can overperform in terms of, in this case, decoding capabilities or whatever you want.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by blackswan-ip, a boutique law firm specializing in intellectual property for neurotech and medtech startups, founded by Eugene Daneshvar, who holds both a JD and PhD in biomedical engineering. blackswan-ip helps innovators secure patents, develop smart IP strategies, and even navigate funding. Whether you're an early-stage startup or scaling your medtech venture, they'll work with you using flat-fee pricing and deep technical expertise. Learn more at blackswan-ip.com. So who's your main, I guess, customers? You're making these devices, right? And then selling it. Are you selling it to labs, or are you making a product from it and actually going into clinical, trials and actual devices or something like this? Or who's the device for right now?
So let's say currently, as you correctly mentioned, we are reselling our devices through other commercial partners. In the specific case, we have three commercial partners that are, let's say, leading the neurotech companies in the preclinical, in the research, let's say, market. That those companies are Plexen, Neuronexus Technologies, and Atlas Neuroengineering. And let's say our job so far was to provide them, let's say, the capabilities to make their equipment, the already existing one, compatible with the stream coming from, with the neural stream coming from our neural interfaces. And after that, once we were capable to, let's say, interfaces the Corticale word with their word, we provide through them our technology to many labs worldwide for any kind of possible application, both on small animal like mice or rats, up to very big animals like a monkey or non-human primates, most in general. But this is just, as you mentioned, the very first part of our, let's say, of our trip. And the second part of our journey instead is mostly related to translating this technology for BCI application. And there, in that case, our business approach is radically different. So in this case, we don't want to provide just components, but what we want to provide is the full, let's say, medical device, and we want to provide it directly to the patient through hospitals or clinics or whatever.
Okay. So in your dream world, what's the limits of this technology? Like, how many channels could you do? What do you think is the upper limit? And why would this be exciting? Why would this be something? What could you do with that amount of channels, do you think?
So let's say the limit, and this is really interesting because, of course, inside your question, there are actually I see two different, let's say, sub question, let me say. So the first one is related to technological limitations. And of course, this is something that is continuously evolving. So we know that we're capable to currently to acquire up to 10, 15K channels simultaneously with no problem with the current technology. Of course, let's say the great challenge there is to squeeze everything in a very small device that consumes as less power as possible, and that fits the medical constraints and regulations, let's say. On the other side is the other sub question is related to which is the real number of, or which is the amount of information that we need to solve properly a certain task. And this is something that it's a really challenging question. So it's really hard to say, okay, we need 15K channels, 20K channels, 30K channels. So this is something really hard to say, but let's say for sure we do not have reached yet the amount of channel that we need to naturally, let's say, make, let's say, something natural, like the feeling of controlling something from the patient itself. We have seen this, for example, with the BlackRock neurotech youth array, that of course it's a really valid technology, but we saw in the patient that they need to put a lot of effort in order to control external devices, for example. Or we have seen other technologies, for example, for speech decoding, where you can achieve very good performance, but still not, let's say, as you naturally would do in the real life. And so, of course, what we know is that we need more information. We need more advanced algorithms to make BCI devices really useful devices that can be widely adopted across many kind of pathologies. Which is the correct number? I think that it really depends on the type of application that you want to target. So probably speech recognition might be more complex than, for example, than motor decoding or any other kind of task. But for sure, what we need is to have more interfacing channels and more information out of our neural interfaces, because the one that we have is sufficient to solve basic, let's say, basic tasks. But for more complex tasks, of course, you need more information out of that.
Yeah, for sure. And so you guys are doing the hardware side of things. You're not doing the algorithm, the decoding or software or anything like this to be able to, I guess, decode the neuronal activity, right?
So actually, less than the very first, let's say, 3 years since the company foundation, let's say, we have focused a lot of our efforts in developing and perfectioning the hardware side. But let's say in the last 1-2 years, we also got some expertise in development of machine learning algorithm to decode the neural signal and to interpret, let's say, most in general, the neural signal. So it's something that we are pushing for, because we know that this is not the only, but is one of the most crucial thing that we need to have in order to provide the community with this kind of medical tools, let's say.
And what kind of data processing do you need for this? I mean, yeah, if you're taking in 10,000 channels, right? 10,000 essentially microphone signals, that's a lot of data. That's a lot of CPU power. Do you have to be plugged into some kind of server rack or something like this? Or is this something that, a wearable or implantable device might be able to handle? Or would that turn into lava from getting so hot?
So let's say this is one of the key challenges, actually, as I mentioned before. So manage this huge amount of data in a very minimal space that consumes as less power as possible. So this is one of the major, I don't want to say bottleneck, but challenges that we have in front of us. And in my opinion, but it's not just my opinion, I'm not inventing anything. You can solve this problem with 2 layers of processing, let's say. The very first layer that can be embedded into the medical device itself, so into the implantable part of the medical device, it's something related to, let's say, dimensionality reduction of the data. So you can extract the most meaningful features out of your, let's say, full band neural signal. The second stage instead is mostly related to decoding. So trying to understand what this bunch of features that you have extracted actually means. And this instead, in my opinion, can be done externally. So you can imagine the implanted device that is capable to collect the data, reduce the dimensionality by extracting the meaningful features, and stream this data wirelessly out to some external device with more power, computational power, and less constraints on the energy that it can consume for doing all the computation of the decoding process. And you can actually give the feedback or give the control to some external devices through this intermediate computational stage, let's say. So this is our vision. We will see with the technology advancement of what will happen in the future, but this is, let's say, the overall idea that we have.
Okay. Yeah, very exciting. So yeah, along that, what's the future look like for you? What does the next 5 years or 10 years look like for you?
So let's say now we have a very, let's say, tight but clear, let's say, path in front of us. So currently we are focusing in validating our technology with a proof of concept device in first in human trials. So this is the very first step that we are going to do in the coming months. And this is, of course, crucial in order to collect enough resources. And resources, I mean, both money and people, of course, that trust in the company in order to move on with the development of the actual medical, with the real, let's say, medical device. And that we think that with the right resources can be ready for the first clinical trial within the next 4 to 5 years. And so we really hope that in, let's say, 6 to 7, maximum 8 years, we can be on the market, on the US market, especially because, as you know, the FDA regulatory system is really, let's say, well conceived in order to solve the issue related to, let's say, these new kind of technologies. And this is why we are mainly targeting US market through the FDA regulatory process.
And the indication or the application would be for these brain-computer interfaces, for paraplegic or paralyzed people or something like locked in or something like this, or what would you be
Correct.
targeting?
Correct. So of course, you know better than me that these kind of neural interfaces can be adopted for many, many different purposes. But of course, you need to focus on a specific indication, especially in the beginning. After that, you can rederive your technology and you can, let's say, use the same technology for different, let's say, clinical targets. But let's say in the beginning, our very first indication is about people with spinal cord injuries. So as you mentioned, paralyzed people with quadriplegia, paraplegia, in order to again interconnect them with the external world, trying to give back, let's say, give back them a sort of, let's say, high quality of life.
Okay. Cool. And then, so you're based in Italy and in Europe. I guess what's that like? What are some advantages and disadvantages of that?
Let's say, so being from this side of the ocean, especially when we talk about BCI and this kind of deep tech neurotechnologies, it's, let's say, mostly, let me say, a disadvantage because, as you know, the whole, let's say, landscape, BCI landscape is mostly in US. And so it's pretty hard to have visibility and to attract funding and all these kind of resources that you need, network and all this kind of stuff from this side of the ocean. And so currently we are just facing most of the feeling is that generally being in Italy and Europe, it's a quite big disadvantage for the development of this kind of technology. And indeed, if you look, for example, to other European companies like InBrain or Neuroelectrics, most of them usually brought part of their company on the US territory. And this is exactly the same kind of approach that we would like to implement, of course, in order to reach the visibility that we need in order to grow up as fast as we can. So on the other side, what I can say is that Europe offers a very high level, but this is the same also in US, a very high level of people and of researchers that can really, let's say, push your technology and your company in a very fast way. But of course, in terms of economical resources and attention, also of the general opinion to this kind of technology, the perfect framework currently is in US.
Oh, so the public and the population, they don't necessarily support this in Italy, or it's not so popular?
Let's say here, as you know, technologically speaking, we are 10 years back, usually with respect to what happened, what is perceived at least in US. And so here the perception sometimes what we feel is that, okay, this is so cool, looks like sci-fi, so something that is impossible, like a movie, you know? And so if someone has to bet or invest, let's say, let's call it as you prefer, let's say, but has to bet on a certain technology. Of course, this is not the primary target in Italy.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so this is exciting. This is an exciting technology, and I think, very useful. And it seems like you're doing partnerships with other companies as well. So basically, get the technology out, even if it's not necessarily from your stuff. You can have that partnership, and it's able to grow because I think this is very important. And more channels is always better, and I think there's very few situations where fewer channels and is worse not having the choice. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention?
Actually, let's say what I wanna say is that most of the time, especially, I don't know which is, let's say, the general audience that you have in your podcast, but let's say, as you know, Corticale is just a startup currently, so we are just at the startup phase. And the very funny part is that most of the startuppers usually are just we're just researchers that move to industry. And most of the time, researchers are somehow enemies of the industry because they try to do everything perfect and they focus on the specific details, but they usually lose, let's say, the general framework in which they are. That is a totally different framework with respect to research. So what I really would like to stress for all the people that are listening to us and that they really would like to move their first step into let's say into a startup in funding a company and bringing what they have discovered or invented or developed into their previous social life in industry. What I really would like to stress, because this is something that I would like to say to the Fabio of 4 years ago, is that try to build up, let's say, the theme even before then the technology itself, because it's the team with the right expertise that you are missing or that with the current team is missing that can push you towards the right, let's say, direction in order to avoid to do, let's say, wrong steps or mistakes or whatever. And this can, let's say, save a lot of money, a lot of time. And so this is really something that I really would like to share with all, let's say, the people that are listening to us, because this is one of the most important thing, because technology is cool. We are engineers, so we like technology and we like hardware, software, all these kinds of things. So we like challenges. But first of all, you have to focus on what is really needed at a certain stage of the development of your company. And to do that, either you have already done a startup before, a successful startup before, or you need people from outside that can give you these advice and can really bring you towards this path. So this is something that I really would like to share, because I think that is really important beside neurotechnology or whatever.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Basically, I mean, we've had this discussion before on the podcast, is kind of this engineering mindset versus scientist mindset. And the engineer, I mean, for me in engineering school, I was always taught like, oh, if your answer is within 10%, it's correct. Basically, if you're close, it's pretty much correct. But the scientists, they're the ones, trying to get within 1% and 0.001% of the true answer. And so you can really spend a long time, many, many years perfecting it. But as you say, in business, you can't be doing that. And especially in medical device and medical technology, because once you have that perfected technology, once you have the technology that you want to move forward, it'll take many years, going through the FDA process and all kinds of reviews and all this kind of stuff. So it can take a long time, and your money will probably not last that long if you're spending many trying to perfect it. So yeah, you really have to throw it down at some point and say good enough, and just go with that. And yeah, it is difficult for this kind of mindset coming from research.
Yeah. That's true, definitely.
Yeah. Well, great, Fabio. This has been excellent. I've really enjoyed this. If people want to reach out, how do they find out more about you or contact you?
So you can reach out through our website. So you can really follow us also on LinkedIn as well. So you can find us quite easily, and you can find also me on LinkedIn. So if you need a contact, please, if you want to contact me, please contact me through LinkedIn. It's quite easy. I'm there. So I'm waiting for you guys.
Excellent. Yeah, everything will be linked in the show notes, so you'll be able to find it. But Fabio, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Adam, to you and to your podcast. Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.